Hello everyone, welcome to Kotlin channel. My name is Anton, and in this video I'm going to talk about the new Kotlin release 1.8.20. As it usually is, the 0.20 releases include several new experimental features that you can unlock by adding a configuration parameter in your build script or by using the opt-in annotation to allow the use of the new APIs in your code. The list of changes for this release is pretty long, but in this video I'm going to focus on the K2 compiler, the language updates, standard library improvements, and Java interoperability. We continue stabilizing the K2 compiler and it's still in alpha status. In this release, the K2 compiler includes a few updates. Now it comes with the preview version of the serialization plugin. It provides alpha support for JavaScript IR compiler, and we also introduced the new language version 2.0 that you can use in your build script to enable the new compiler. We recently announced the plan to make K2 compiler stable in Kotlin 2.0, so it will be a major version update that might make you think that it would break your existing code. But Kotlin changes with every language version update, and the new language features get introduced all the time. We always try to minimize the number and impact of breaking changes and follow the Kotlin language evolution process. Kotlin 2.0 will be no different in that respect. To enable K2 compiler, you need to supply an extra configuration parameter to Kotlin C. If for whatever reason you are compiling from command line, then just add the language version argument and you will be fine. And if you're like me and prefer Gradle KTS scripts for configuring the project, then this configuration snippet will do the trick. And by the way, I have always used the Kotlin compile task myself to configure the Kotlin compiler in Gradle, and I noticed that the Kotlin options block is now deprecated. Whatever you used to write in that configuration block is being moved to the new compiler options configuration, where you can now use the proper constants for configuration instead of strings. This is a work in progress though, and in the future we will add a proper configuration DSL to improve the user experience. Regarding the K2 configuration, the previous compiler option -x use K2 is now deprecated, so if you still have this option in your configuration file, you will see a corresponding warning message from the compiler. Starting from this release, the serialization compiler plugin works with the K2 as well, but it comes with an important change. It now prohibits serializer customization with a companion object. So far, it was possible to mark a class with the serializable annotation and at the same time declare a custom serializer with serializer annotation on its companion object, like in this example. In this case, just by looking at this annotation, it's not possible to say which serializer is used. Actually, class foo has a custom serializer. To prevent this kind of confusion, in Kotlin 1.8.20, we introduced a compiler warning for when the scenario is detected. The warning includes a possible migration path to resolve the issue, and in Kotlin 2.0, we plan to promote this warning to a compiler error. So we recommend that you migrate your code if you see this warning. So if you use such construct in your code, we recommend updating it like this. It looks slightly more verbose, but with this approach, it's clear that the class foo uses a custom serializer declared in the companion object. So make sure to try K2 now and let us know how it works for you. Let's look at the preview versions of the new language features in this release. There are three major features that I want to talk about this time. For enum classes, we added the new entries property that is supposed to replace the values function. There is an update for data objects, and we are lifting the restrictions on secondary constructors with bodies in inline classes. Enum classes in Kotlin have a synthetic values function which returns an array of the enum constants. But using an array can lead to hidden performance bugs both in Kotlin and Java. In addition, most of the APIs use collections, and that means that you would need to convert the array to collection quite often. To fix these problems, we introduced the entries property for enum classes, which should be used instead of the values function. The call to the entries property returns a pre-allocated immutable list of the constants that you declared in the enum class. This property is experimental at this time, and you need to opt in to use it. The values function is still supported, but we recommend you to use the entries property instead. To try this feature, you need to set the language version to 1.9 in the compiler options. Let's talk about data objects now. These were first previewed in Kotlin 1.7.20, and the data objects allow you to declare objects with singleton semantics and clean toString representation. In this example, you can see how adding the data keyword to an object improves the readability of its toString output. So print line prints just the simple name of the singleton class. Data objects are really convenient when used in sealed hierarchies because they can be used conveniently alongside the data classes. For instance, here, declaring end of file as a data object instead of a plain object means that it will get a nice toString implementation without having to implement it manually, and it will maintain the symmetry with the data class definitions in this example. The semantics of data objects has now been updated. The compiler automatically generates several convenience functions, including toString, equals, and hashcode. The toString function of a data object returns a simple name of that object. We have seen that in the previous example. The equals function ensures that all the objects that have the type of your data object are now considered equal. Imagine if we create an instance of my singleton data object and there is a function that instantiates the same class using reflection. The equals function ensures that these two are equal, but make sure that you compare the data objects using the equals operator and never by the reference. The generated hashcode function has the behavior that is consistent with the equals function, so that all the runtime instances of the data object have the same hashcode. So data objects and data classes look very similar, but some functions are not generated for data objects. First of all, because objects are intended to be used as singletons, null copy function is generated. Also, data objects have no data properties, just constants. Because of that, destructuring such objects does not make sense. Therefore, the compiler does not generate component functions for data objects. To enable data objects, you need to set the language level version to 1.9 in your build script. Give it a try and let us know how it works for you. So the third feature in the list for language updates is for the inline classes. In Kotlin, inline classes used to allow only public primary constructor without the init blocks or secondary constructors. As a result, it was impossible to encapsulate the underlying values or create an inline class that would represent a constraint value. This was fixed in Kotlin 1.4.30 as we lifted the restrictions on the init blocks. Now we are making a step further, allowing the secondary constructors with bodies in the preview mode. To enable this feature, you need to set the language level to 1.9. Some new features were added to the standard library as well. The autoclosable interface is added to the common standard library so that you can use one common interface for all the libraries to close the resources. In the JVM projects, this interface is an alias for Java-lang autoclosable. The new autoclosable interface is experimental and you need to opt in to use it. In addition, the use extension function is now available on all the platforms. This function executes a given block on the selected resource and then calls the close method. This is probably not new for those who have used Kotlin for the JVM projects, but this is rather a consistency improvement for Kotlin multi-platform projects. In this new release, we also added support for base64 encoding and decoding. We provide 3 class instances that each use different encoding schemes and have different behaviors. For the standard base64 encoding scheme, use base64 default instance. The URL safe instance can be used for URL and file name safe encoding scheme. Alternatively, we also provide the MIME instance for MIME encoding scheme. Note that when you use this instance, all the encoding functions insert a line separator every 76 characters, and when decoding, any illegal characters are skipped and don't throw an exception. Another change in the standard library worth mentioning is the support of volatile annotation in Kotlin Native. If you annotate a var property with Kotlin JVM volatile, the backing field is marked so that any reads or writes to this field are atomic, and the writes are always visible to the other threads. But this annotation was only effective in the JVM projects, and if you use it in Kotlin Native, it is ignored, which can lead to errors. In this release, we have introduced a common volatile annotation in Kotlin concurrent package that you can use in both JVM and Kotlin Native. To try this feature, use opt-in annotation and set the language level to 1.9 in the compiler options. We continue to improve Kotlin interoperability with Java, and this time we introduce a preview of Java synthetic property references. Consider this Java code. If we use this Java class in our Kotlin code, it was always allowed to write person.age, and age in this case is a synthetic property. Now you can also create references to the same property, and this could be useful when using collections API. In my example here, I'm using the synthetic property reference to sort the list of persons by age. Of course, to use this new feature, you have to adjust the language level in the compiler options. In this release, there is a list of other new additions and improvements for Kotlin Native, Kotlin.js, and Gradle plugin, but the most exciting feature is the first preview of Kotlin WebAssembly backend, and Sebastian is going to record a dedicated video on this topic. So don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that bell button for notifications. Otherwise, let me know in the comments if you like the video, and have a nice Kotlin!